Hi guys, this is Learn Extra Maths Literacy Session 6. In this section, we will continue looking at financial maths. Specifically, we are interested in changing interest rates, compounding periods, and credits and loans. So first, let's look at changing interest rates and compounding periods. Now, interest rates can change during the period of investment or during the period of the loan. In case of a loan, when the interest rate changes, you might find that the payments that you will have to make back will also change. So it does affect the payments that are made during a loan. Compound interest that you have looked at so far has always been annual. However, compounding can occur more than once a year. So for example, interest can be compounded monthly, which is 12 times a year, quarterly, which is the same as 4 times a year, or every 3 months. Monthly is every month, so that's 12 months in a year. And you can even have semi-annual and daily compounding. Now, whenever your compounding changes, what will happen is that it will require 2 changes to be made to the compound interest formula. So guys, remember the compound interest formula you have dealt with in previous sections. It's given by A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of N. Now, with the change in compounding periods, it requires 2 changes to this formula. The first thing that we will have to do is divide your interest rate by the number of compounding periods. So we divide the interest rate by M, where M is the number of compounding periods. And then we also have to times N by the number of compounding periods. So you times your N by the same M that you are dividing the interest rate by. The stated or annual interest rate is known as the nominal interest rate. So if, for example, they say 6% per annum compounded, we can say semi-annually or half-yearly. This will then be an example of a stated or a nominal interest rate. This can change depending on, if they can, for example, say to you it's 6% per annum compounded quarterly, and that will affect the effective interest rate for that period. So if it's compounded quarterly or monthly, you'll have different effective interest rates for each of those periods. Now, if we take something like 6% per annum compounded half yearly or every 6 months, in order to get the effective rate for that period, so this is our nominal interest rate, in order to get the effective rate, we would take that 6% and divide it by the number of compoundings. So in 1 year, we have 2 half years. So therefore, I would take the 6% divided by 2, since there's 2 half years in 1 year, and that will give me 3%. And that will be the effective rate for each half year. All right, so we often write this, we need to differentiate. So we often write I, for example, 2, so this is your subscript, and that will refer to a nominal rate that's compounded half yearly. So that's your nominal rate. And this number here refers to the number of compoundings that take place in a year. But we will look at this in more detail later on in this section. Okay, so for now, let's just move on to the examples. And example 1. We are told that Jason invests 5,000 Rand into an investment fund. An investment fund is a vehicle that will help you to earn interest on your money. He invests it for 3 years at an interest rate of 6% per annum compound interest. So just in that first sentence, they have given you quite a lot of information. He invests 5,000 Rand. So, because I told us it's compound interest, we know we're going to use the formula A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of N. So 5,000 Rand is the original amount that he invests. And remember, P stands for the initial or the original amount. So P is 5,000. He invested for 3 years, so your N here would be 3, at an interest rate of 6% per annum compound interest. He then takes the accumulated amount and invests that into another fund for a further 3 years, and this time the interest rate is 8.5% per annum compound interest. They want us to find the final value, which is the value of A, of this entire investment. So guys, there's basically two things happening here. In the first 3 years, he invests 5,000 Rand, and in this case the interest rate is 6% per annum. He then takes whatever amount he has left at the end of those 3 years, and then he invests that for a further 3 years at 8.5% per annum compound interest. So in total, his investment is over a 6-year period, but there are two different effective interest rates over that period. So we have a changing interest rate over the term of his investment. So if I want to find out what's going to happen at the end of the 6th year, I first look at what's happened at the end of the 3rd year. So at the 3rd year, to work out the final amount, so we're breaking this question down into two parts. We're going to first look at the 3rd year, and then in the second part, we will look at what happens at the end of the investment, which is the 6th year. So A here, to work out the first part, A is equal to P, which is 5,000, times 1 plus I. The interest rate for the first part of this, the effective interest rate, was 6% per annum. Per annum, remember, means per year. 6% we can write as 0.06, since it's 6 divided by 100. And this is invested for a period of 3 years. So the entire thing is raised to the power of 3. Whatever amount he gets at the end of this, at the end of the 3rd year, he's then going to take that and invest it for a further 3 years. So we work out the first part. It's 5,000. Guys, please practice your calculator skills. You don't want to lose out marks because you don't know how to use your calculator. And a calculator is very important in this section of work. So that 5,000 Rand over a 3-year period at 6% interest per year will give me 5,955 Rand, 08. And we're not going to round off. So you see, as you see the calculator answer there, we're keeping that entire answer, because that's going to then help us to answer the second part, which is what is the amount at the end of the 6th year of this investment. So we take this amount at the end of the 3rd year. That now becomes our new original amount for the beginning of the 4th year. So this now becomes the P that we are going to use to work out the second half of this investment. That becomes the new value, the new principal amount. So our A at the end of the 6th year would be equal to 5,955 Rand and 8 cents. We invested, this time the effective interest rate is 8.5% per annum. So I is 0.085. So we say it's 1 plus 0.085. So this is just straight substitution into your formula. At the end of the 6th year, from the 3rd year to the 6th year, so from year 3, if we count, all the way to year 6, that's a period of 3 years. So our N here would be 3. Okay, we can then put that into the calculator. So it's that same amount. We're going to use exactly the same amount times 1 plus 0.085. And this time we're going to raise to the power of 3 again. And we get 7,606 Rand. To the nearest cent, it would be 36 cents. So it's 7,606.36 cents. So at the end of the 6th year of his investment, he ends up with 7,606 Rand. He started, remember, with 5,000. So over the 6-year period, we get to 7,606.36. And we had two different interest rates that were working on this investment value. At the first part, we had a 6% interest rate. And for the second half, we had an 8.5% interest rate. Okay, so you need to be able to work out the end value if you are given two different interest rates over a period. Guys, the next example, example 2, is going to focus on change in compounding periods. Here we are told that Thembi invests 20,000 Rand. That's the amount she's putting away initially, so that's our P value, at 9% per annum per year, but compounded half yearly. So what that means is that interest is added to this amount every half year. So every 6 months, she will get 9% divided by 2, 4.5%. What amount will she get at the end of 3 years? So what end value? So here they are looking for A. We are going to use the formula A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of N, because we are dealing with compound interest. We want to know what amount she will get at the end of 3 years. We know that P has a value of 20,000. And the interest rate, now this is where the change comes in. We are given a nominal interest rate, 9% per annum compounded half yearly. That's just the stated interest rate. It's not what the effective rate is. I need to now work out what interest rate I'm going to be using every half year. So I have to take my interest rate and divide it by the number of compounding periods. So I take the interest rate, divide it by 2. 9% is the same as 0.09. Divide that by 2. 0.09 divided by 2 will give me 0.045. So 4.5% per half year. That is the interest rate that we are interested in. And we know that N here is equal to 3. But this is going to require a change when we put it into the formula, because in 3 years, we have 6 half years. So in 3 years, we have 6 half years because interest is being added every 6 months. So the effective number of periods we're going to use here is 3 times the number of compoundings. So 3 times 2, which is 6. That's the number that we are going to put into our formula. So we require 2 changes here. We divided the interest rate by 2, and we times the number of years by 2, which is the number of compounding periods. We are looking for the value of A. All right. Let's get to that. So we're going to substitute into our formula. We know that P has a value of 20,000. Times 1 plus our effective interest rate. And it's always a good idea to first work it out on the side, then put it into your formula. So it's 1 plus 0.045. And to the power of 6, because we had to times N by 2. We can then put that into the calculator and let's see what we get. If you wanted to, you could have just left this as 0.09 over 2, or you can simplify it as I have done. Just don't round off at that stage, because if you round off and make the 0.05 or something like that, you're going to get very different answers from what I get. So it's 20,000 times 1 plus 0.045 to the power of 6. And that gives us an answer of 26,045 Rand and 20 cents. So it's 26,045 Rand and 20 cents to the nearest cent. Okay, so just a reminder here, what happens to the formula when you have a change in compounding periods? You should all know this by now. We have to divide our interest rate by the number of compoundings, and we have to times our number of years by the number of compoundings. That is very, very NB, important. You need to remember that for further examples that you will get. Guys, we're going to continue looking now at compound interest and changing compounding periods, and we're going to look and see how it affects the value of an investment. So this is example 3. You have the choice of investing 1,000 Rand at 11.5% per annum, compounded monthly, that's option A, at 12% per annum, compounded quarterly, which is option B, or at 12.5% per annum, compounded annually, and that's option C. They say show all calculations and explain which option you would choose if you want to invest your money for 3 years. So obviously, if you're investing money, you want to choose the best option that's going to give you the highest amount of money at the end of those 3 years. Okay, so you're obviously going to go for the option that's going to give you the most amount of money. So we've got to do each of them in turn. Now the first option, option A, offered us an interest rate of 11.5% per annum, compounded monthly. Now what that means is that every month, compounded monthly, every month you are going to get interest added to this 1,000 Rand. All of these are compound interest options, therefore we will use the formula A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of N. And because we are investing the same amount each time, we're investing 1,000 Rand, we will very easily be able to see which option is going to be the best. We're obviously going to go for the one that's going to give us the most out of that 1,000 Rand, or get us the most amount of interest out of 1,000 Rand. So in the first option, we've got 11.5% compounded monthly. Okay, let's do that one first. In every case, our P is 1,000 Rand, and in every case, N is 3 years. For the first one, A is equal to P, we have as 1,000. 1 plus your I, remember to work out your I, we have to take the interest rate, which is 11.5%. So it's 11.5 over 100, which is equal to 0.115 in decimal form. And to work out the effective interest rate per month, I've got to take my interest rate and divide it by 12, which is the number of times that compoundings occur. So I take 0.115 and divide that by 12. I'm going to leave it like that because if you put this into the calculator, you might end up rounding off unnecessarily. So let's just leave it like that. That's the value we're going to put into the calculator. Because compounding is 12 times in 1 year, in 3 years, 3 times 12, 36 months in 3 years. So we'll get interest 36 times. So it's 1 plus 0.115 all of 12. So I've divided my interest rate by 12. I've times my number of years by 12. And let's see what that gives us. So we're going to put that into the calculator. And it's 0.115 over 12. And we raise the entire thing to the power of 36. And that gives us an answer of 1,409 Rand and 67 cents. Okay guys, so we looked at option A, which required monthly compounding. Let's look at option B, which is going to give us quarterly interest. So option B. The option here, option B, said we are getting 12% per annum compounded quarterly. So it's 12% per annum compounded quarterly. Now what that means is that you are going to get interest paid into this investment every 3 months. Quarterly, we're taking the year, dividing it into 4 parts, and that will give us 3 months every time. So in order to work out what our final amount is, remember we've got to make 2 changes to our formula. We need to take the interest rate and divide it by the number of compoundings. So in 1 year, we are going to have 4 compoundings. So we take the interest rate, which is 0.12, divided by 4. You can leave it in that form, or you can say, well, 12% divided by 4 is 3, and you can use it in that form. Okay, so we take the interest rate divided by the number of compoundings. That will give us the interest rate that we are going to get every 3 months. The other change to the formula is we need to take the n, which was equal to 3, and times it by the number of compoundings. So 3 times 4 would give us 12 compoundings in 3 years. Now that makes sense because what we are basically saying is that there are 12 sets of 3 months in 3 years, because it's 4 times that interest is added per year. So we can just put into our formula, we have 1,000 Rand that's invested. We've changed our interest rate, so we can put it in 0.03 to the power of 12. And let's see what we get there. So it's 1,000 times 1 plus 0.03 to the power of 12. And that gives us 1,425 Rand and 76 cents. So it's 1,425.76. Okay, so in option B, if compounding is quarterly, so that means it's more often than we were getting previously, well, it's actually less often than we were getting in the first one. First time we were getting monthly interest, now we're getting quarterly interest, but we get a higher amount at the end. So here we get 1,425 Rand when interest was compounded, quarterly at 12% per annum. Let's look at what happens in option C. In option C, you are given 12.5% per annum compounded annually. Now these are examples that you were used to before. The 12.5% per annum compounded annually just means that interest is getting added once a year. So compounded annually, that is the same as saying you are getting 12.5% per annum interest added. So it's just one time a year. Okay? So we don't have to do any changes or make any changes to the formula because compounding is yearly. So we substitute straight into formula. A is equal to 1,000 times 1 plus 12.5% is the same as 12.5 over 100, which is 0.125. Okay, we're going to add 1 plus 0.125. Raise that to n, which is 3 years. We don't have to change n because compounding only happens one time a year. 3 times 1 is still going to give us 3. We can then put that into our calculator. That's 1,000 times 1 plus 0.125 to the power of 3. And that will give us 1,423 Rand and 83 cents to the nearest cent. It's 1,423.83 to the nearest cent. Okay, so now we've evaluated each of those options. We looked at what option A, B, and C is going to give us. Let's see which is the one you're going to settle for. Obviously, you want the one that's going to give you the most money. So in option A, we got 1,409 Rand. Option B, we got 1,425 Rand. And option C, we got 1,423 Rand. So obviously the best option here, option B, is the best option. So the one that gave us quarterly compounding was in fact the best option. So it isn't always the case that the highest interest rate is going to give you the best amount of money at the end, or the best end value. So you don't just look at your interest rate. It is very important to take into account how often compounding occurs. And as we just showed you, that the highest interest rate doesn't always give you the best value for your money here. Guys, we're going to now look at the last example on change in compounding periods. This is example 4. Here we are told that Sam invests 50,000 Rand on the 1st of March 2008. That pays an interest rate of 7.5% per annum, compounded monthly. Okay, so he invests 50,000 Rand, so my value for P, the initial amount, would be 50,000. He puts this in on the 1st of March 2008. We can't do anything with that yet, but I'm sure it will come into the question later on. The savings account pays an interest rate of 7.5% per annum, compounded monthly. So straight away there we can see the compounding isn't a yearly compounding. The compounding is monthly, so that means every month we will get a certain amount of interest added. So we can work out our effective monthly rate, remember, by dividing by the number of compounding periods. Okay, let's look at the first question. They want us to calculate the monthly interest rate. So in order to work out what the monthly interest rate is, this is all we have to do. We have to take the stated interest rate, which is 7.5% per annum, and divide that by the number of compounding periods. So 7.5%, we're going to divide that by the number of compoundings, which is 12. 7.5% is the same as 7.5 over 100, which is 0,075. We're going to take that divided by 12, and that will be the monthly interest rate that Sam will get. 0.075 divided by 12, that gives us an answer 6,25 times 10 to the minus 3. That is equivalent to 0,00625. So we've got 3 zeros in front of the 625. Okay, that's decimals and percentages and so on. You learned that in a much earlier lesson. So therefore the effective interest rate is, if we want to write it as a percentage form, we need to times this by 100. So if we times it by 100, the effective rate will be, so we take that times by 100, and we get 0.625%. 0.625%. And that is the effective monthly rate in percentage form. Now the next part wants us to use the formula A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of n and work out what Sam's investment will be worth at the end of February 2009. So here, remember the question said he put the money in on the 1st of March 2008, and it's going to go and stay in the account until the end of February 2009. So it goes into the account, stays there from the 1st of March 2008 till the end of February 2009. And if you count from the 1st of March to the end of Feb, you will see that that will be a period of 12 months or 1 year. Okay, so it's 1 year from the 1st of March of 2008 to Feb 2009. That's an entire year that we are talking about. Okay, 12 months in that period. Use the formula, that's our standard compound interest rate formula. We know that the value of P was 50,000 Rand. We've already just worked out the effective interest rate. So we can put 50,000 Rand in for P times 1 plus 0,00625. We just worked that out in the question above, to the power of 12 months, because there are 12 compounding periods in this year from March to February. We can then put that into our calculator. So it's 50,000 times 1 plus 0.00625. We raise that entire thing to the power of 12, and we get 53,881 Rand and 63 cents. So it's 53,881.63. So in a year, using an effective compound interest rate of 0.625%, his 50,000 Rand will amount to 53,000. The last part wants to know how much of interest Sam will have earned over the year. How much of interest, guys? So here what they're interested in is not the end value. They don't want A, no. They don't want P. They want the interest amount. They want to know how much of interest is he earning on his investment. Remember, the final amount is always made up of the original value plus all the interest that he's earned. Okay? So the final amount, 53,881.63, that is equal to the original value of 50,000 Rand plus any of the interest, all of the interest that gets added up over that period. So if I would just like to know how much of interest is in this final amount, I just need to subtract out the original amount. So the amount of interest that's added, we subtract 50,000. So 53,881 minus 50,000 will give me an answer of 3,881 Rand and 63 cents. So therefore, in this period, over this year, using an effective interest rate of 0.625% per month, he manages to earn interest of 3,881 Rand and 63 cents. A very big part of the financial maths section is credits and loans. Now, when you borrow money, which is known as a loan, the cost to you is the interest that you have to pay back. Because remember, you are borrowing money and you're using money that doesn't belong to you. So the cost to you is the interest payments that you have to make back on the borrowed amount. Credit purchases. So if you go to a shop and you buy, for example, a TV on credit, those also have interest charges, since once again you have the use of something that is not yours. So you're using it now, but you don't own it. So in order to get that privilege, you have to make interest payments. A hire purchase agreement is just a way that you can buy on credit. So it's just a form of credit. And what happens there, so for example, you go to a furniture store, you want to buy a TV, you can put down a deposit and then you make fixed monthly payments. And often you will find that hire purchase agreements are based on simple interest. You pay off your amount every month until you've paid off your debt. And if you can't make those payments, if you don't make those payments back, then the item will be repossessed. They take the item back from you and they don't give you any of the money that you've paid already on it. So there is a threat of repossession if you cannot pay off your credit purchased. Now, a very important and big section in loans is home loans. Now, you'll find that most people actually cannot afford to go out and buy a house cash. So most people that you know will often have a home loan if they own a home. So what we're going to look at here is we're going to look at home loans and look at how the monthly repayments are worked out in practice. The monthly repayments, so every month what amount is paid back to the bank, that's determined by the size of the bond. Bond is just another way to say the amount of money that you borrowed in order to buy your home. The interest rate, whatever interest rate is effective over that period, and the number of years of the loan. Okay, so how long you have the loan for. You'll also find that the interest rate each year can change, or every so often it can change, and that will affect the amount that you have to pay back. Now, in practice, we often use a table that I'm going to show you in a second, and we work out what our monthly payment will be. But there's a very specific formula that we use to work out the monthly payment. We take whatever the home loan amount is, we divide that by 1,000 Rand, and then we times it by a factor, and this factor is the factor that's found in the following table. So if we look at what we have here, this says your monthly payment per 1,000 Rand of a home loan, if interest is compounded monthly, and then they give you different options of interest rates. So we go all the way from 7% to 15%. So say you buy a home and the effective interest rate, for example, is 9% per annum compounded monthly. Okay, so let's, for example, focus on that one. So it's 9% per annum compounded monthly, and you take your home loan out over 25 years. So you want to pay off whatever amount over 25 years, and this is the interest rate that is offered by the bank. That would mean we would have to times by a factor of 8 Rand 39 per 1,000 Rand. So remember, what we would do is take the home loan amount, so we take the loan, divide that by 1,000. We're basically trying to see how many thousands there are in your home loan amounts, and we then times it by this factor. So if you were given a 9% compounded monthly rate and you took your home loan out over 25 years, we would times by a factor of 8 Rand 39. So we're going to come back to this table in a second. So I'm just going to rub out all the writing that I've put on here, because we will be using this in a second to answer the following question. So here we are told that a newly married couple are about to buy their first home. So they're newly married, they're going to buy their first home, probably can't afford to pay in cash, so they're going to take out a home loan. They find a property they like at a price of 375,000. They've saved enough money to pay the 20% deposit. Okay, so what often happens is that you would have to pay a deposit before the bank agrees to guarantee this home loan amount. So they're going to have to pay a 20% deposit before they get any money from the bank. And here it just says ignore transfer fees and lawyers' fees. This is also something in practice that will be added onto this amount, but we are not interested in it for our purposes. A bank grants them a home loan on the balance. The balance being whatever is left over after they've paid the 20% deposit. So 375,000 Rand less the 20% deposit, that's what the bank is giving them. Okay? They have to repay this over 30 years, so that's our period, at an interest rate of 10% per annum, compounded monthly. Use the factor table, which is the one we just looked at just now, to help to answer the following questions. All right. The first question wants to know, how much do they need to borrow from the bank? Now remember, the bank is giving them a loan less the 20% deposit. So basically, we need to decrease that amount of 375,000 Rand. We need to decrease that by 20%, and that will tell us how much they're actually going to need to borrow from the bank. Remember, again, percentages coming up in this section. If you would like to work out a percentage decrease, we have to take the original amount and times by 1 minus the percentage decrease. Okay, and this is written in decimal form. Okay, there are more than one way to do this, but I think this is the quickest way, and so I'm going to use this way. You could also just find 20% off that amount and then subtract it, and you would get the same answer, or you could do any number of other things, but this is the quickest way to do it. So I want to work out how much they need to borrow from the bank. So they will borrow, the borrowed amount, or the loan amount, would be equal to 375,000 times 1 minus 0.2, 20% in decimal form. So we're basically taking 375,000 and timesing that by that bracket. 1 minus 0.2 is the same as 0,8, or you could just write that step into your calculator. Okay, so they're paying 20%, they're getting a loan on 20% less than the value of the home. So it's 375,000 times by 0.8, and that gives us 300,000. So therefore the bank is giving them a loan amount of 300,000, and they would then have had to pay a 20% deposit, which in this case would have equaled 75,000 Rand. So they pay 75,000 Rand in cash, and then the bank gives them the rest of the money that they can pay against their home loan. They then ask us to work out their monthly repayment. They tell us how to work it out. We take the loan amount, which is 300,000, divided by 1,000 and times by the factor. Now the factor is a very interesting part. How do we determine the factor? Here we have to go back and look at the question and see what they tell us. They say that they are working on an interest rate of 10% per annum, compounded monthly, and that's going to help us to find the factor. It's also being repaid over a period of 30 years. Okay, so let's write down this information. We've got 10% per annum, compounded monthly, and this is over a period of 30 years. So in order to work out the factor, all I'm going to do is go to the table that we looked at previously. Go to this table. We know that they've been granted 10% per annum compounded monthly, and they're taking the loan out over 30 years. So where these two coincide, 10%, we go down there, 30 years, there we are, and that's the one that we are interested in. So that's the amount that we are going to use. Okay, so we put a star there so we don't forget where it is. That's the amount we are going to use in order to work out how much they will have to pay back every month. So our factor here, 8.78 Rand per 1,000 Rand. Okay, so now that we have our factor, which was 8.78 Rand, this is our factor, we can now work out their monthly payment. So their monthly payment is going to be equal to the loan amount, which is 300,000, divided by 1,000, because remember they're going to pay 8.78 Rand per 1,000 Rand. So we need to times this then by 8.78 Rand. And let's see how much they will pay. So it's 300,000 divided by 1,000. There's 300 lots of 1,000 Rands in 300,000. We times that by 8.78. And that gives us an answer of 2,634 Rand. So that's going to be the monthly repayment that they're going to have to make back on this home loan every month for the next 30 years. Okay, the next part asks us if they take exactly 30 years to pay off the bond, how much will they have paid in total? Once again, we're excluding any extra fees here. So they're taking exactly 30 years to pay off the bond. How much will they have paid in total? So here you've got to be careful because we need to work out the total payment. It's not just going to be the monthly payment, it's also going to be the deposit, because remember they paid that in cash. That deposit that they paid plus all of the monthly payments. So we've got to add up everything that they pay over the life of this loan of 30 years and add that to the initial deposit, and that will tell us how much they're actually paying in cash. Okay, so first let's work out the total monthly payments over 30 years. It's going to be, so every month, remember they pay 2,634 Rand. They're paying that over a period of 30 years. So we times it by 30, and there are 12 months in a year. So this amount will tell me, this part of the bracket will tell me how many payments they're making. So 30 years, 12 months in total, that's how many payments they're making. We times that by the amount every month that they pay. And let's see what we get to. So it's 2,634 times 30 times 12. And that gives us an answer of 948,240 Rand. So it's 948,240. So that's the total monthly payments. But remember, this is not what they're going to pay in the end, because we still have to add on the deposit. So the total payments, remember they paid a deposit of 75,000 Rand, which we worked out in the beginning, which was 20% of the home loan amount, times 948, not times, plus. Okay, and let's see what they're going to pay in total. So it's that amount plus the 75,000 Rand deposit. And that is 1,200,000. Okay, so it's 10232.40. Okay, so this is the amount that they end up paying at the end of this entire home loan. So it's just over 1,232,000, and this is over a period of 30 years. Okay, so you can see that the interest adds up quite a bit when you're taking out a loan, especially a loan, such a big loan over such a long period of time. They're going to end up paying quite a lot of money back. So it's 1 million and a bit. Okay, the last part wants to know, or the fourth part wants to know, what is the total interest paid on the home loan? Remember, the final amount is always made up of your initial amount plus the interest. So we know the final amount we've just worked out on the previous page. So it's 10232.40. So it's 10232.40 is equal to the initial value, which was 300,000. That was the value of the loan, plus whatever interest they're going to pay back. So the interest will just be the final amount minus the initial payment. Okay, so we minus from that 300,000, and we get an answer of 723,240. So it's 723,240. And that's quite a lot of interest. That's the amount of interest they're going to pay on this home loan amount of 300,000 Rand. The last part of this question wants to know what percentage of their total repayments does the total interest paid represent. So the total interest here, 723,240. What percentage of their total repayments? Remember, we've already worked out the total repayment, which was, again, let's just go back and have a look at that one. The total repayment was 1023240. And we want to know what percentage is the interest of that amount. So the percentage interest, all we have to do to work that out is divide the total interest by the total repayment. And we times that by 100, and that would give us the percentage payment back. Okay. So we take 723240 divided by 1023240, times that by 100, and we get 70.68%. Therefore, the interest will make up 70.68% of their total repayment. Okay, so that's the home loan example, quite a big example that. So guys, we're going to move on to example 6, which is an example of a credit purchase. Specifically, it is an HP agreement, which is often a simple interest type of credit agreement. We are told that Mrs. Phillips wants to buy a lounge suite that costs 4,500 Rand. So if she buys it right now in cash, that's how much she'll pay. She puts down a deposit of 900 Rand. So she's going to put down a deposit. That's the amount she's going to also pay in cash. Then she will be able to sign an HP agreement with the furniture store. HP means hire purchase. For the remaining amount, she must make 24, so that means over 2 years, 24 monthly payments of 250 Rand each to pay off the balance on the lounge suite, the balance being the 4,500 minus the 900 Rand that she pays as a deposit. We want to know what percentage of the cash price is the deposit of 900 Rand. So all we have to do is to work out what the cash price is, and that's very easy. They gave it to us. It is 4,500 Rand. So if I want to work out what percentage 900 Rand is of 4,500, I just need to take the 900, divide by 4,500, and times by 100. And that will give me the percentage of the cash price that she is paying. So all we do is we take 900, divide that by 4,500, times by 100, and that gives us an answer of 20%. So she has to pay a 20% deposit. Next, we want to know what amount does she pay in total. Remember, the total is always going to be equal to the deposit plus all the monthly payments. And the monthly payments we can work out, since we know that she is paying 250 Rand every month for a period of 24 months. So a period of 2 years, and she's paying 250 Rand for each month. 250 over 24 months, we can work that out. 250 times 24 will give us an answer of 6,000 Rand. So in total, she pays 6,000 Rand in monthly payments. But since we want to work out what her total payment is, we need to add on the deposit. So the total is going to be the deposit of 900 Rand plus this 6,000 Rand. And this is going to give us an answer of 6,900 Rand that she will pay on this lounge suite, which costs 4,500 initially. Okay, so we're going to look at the last part of this question. We want to know how much of interest does Mrs. Phillips pay back on the lounge suites. Okay, remember, the final payment is always equal to the original payment plus the interest. But in this case, we have to be careful because Mrs. Phillips also made a deposit. So her initial payment wasn't 4,500. her initial payment was 4,500 Rand minus the 900 Rand deposit. So therefore she only was paying back a loan amount of 3,600 Rand. That's how much she had to pay back. Okay, that was what the original credit agreement was based on. She has to pay back more than that, but this is what the original HP agreement was based on, the amount of 3,600 Rand. She ends up, at the end of everything, she ends up paying 6,900 Rand, including the deposit. And we know that the original amount of the loan was 3,600 Rand. So in order to work out the interest payment, I just need to take away the initial loan amount from the total amount that she's paid in cash. So I need to say 6,900 minus 3,600. This will give us an answer of 2,400 Rand. So this is what she ends up paying back in interest. So this total amount minus the 3,600, which was the loan agreement, will give me her total interest payment. Guys, this is the last example that we are going to look at. This is example 7, and we're still continuing with credit examples. Sade has landed herself in trouble by overspending on her credit card. She now owes 15,000 Rand to the bank and is being charged 15% per annum compounded monthly interest on the balance owed. She arranges to meet with the bank manager to discuss paying off her debt. And this is what he suggests. He says that Sade has to stop all spending on the credit card, and then she must also make 24 equal monthly payments to settle her debt. The first question wants to know, what is the monthly interest rate? So let's go back to the question. They tell us that she's been charged 15% per annum compounded monthly. So remember, if we would like to work out what the effective monthly rate is, we need to take the interest rate that's given and divide by the number of compounding periods. So the monthly interest rate will be the 15%, which is 0,15, divided by the number of compoundings, which is 12. So 0.15 divided by 12 will give us an answer of 0.0125. So that's 0.0125. If we want to, we can write this in percentage form by timesing that by 100. So if you times by 100, you will get an answer of 1.25%. So that is the monthly interest rate, 1.25% or 0.0125. They then ask us to use the formula, and they give you the formula to work out the payments. It's equal to P times I. So let's look at each of these variables. P is your initial amount. I is the effective interest rate. And it's all over 1 minus 1 plus I. Again, I is your interest rate. And N is your number of years or your time period. So using that formula, we have to work out her payment. So her payment, we know, is going to be the initial amount. Remember, the initial amount of her debt was 15,000 Rand. That's how much she owes. That's what she's gotten in trouble for. So it's 15,000 Rand times the interest rate in decimal form, which is 0.0125, all over 1 minus 1 plus, once again, we put in the interest rate in decimal form, and that's raised to the power of minus 24, which is the number of payments. Remember here they said she has to make 24 equal monthly payments in order to settle her debt. Okay, we can put this entire monster into the calculator and let's see what we get. So we want a fraction here. It's 1,500 times 0.0125. We divide that, open a bracket, 1 minus another bracket, 1.0125. Close brackets. We're just going to raise that bracket to the power of minus 24. And we get an answer of 727 Rand and 30 cents to the nearest cent. So it's 727.30. Okay, and this is how much she is going to have to pay every month in order to settle her debt of 15,000 Rand for the next 2 years. We then want to know what is the total amount that Sade has to pay back. Well, all we have to do there, we know that her monthly payment is 727 Rand and 30 cents. And we know that she pays this over a period of 24 months. So I just need to times her monthly payments by the number of times she makes those payments. So it's 727.30 times 24. And that gives us 17,455 Rand and 20 cents. This is the amount she is going to end up paying on the original 15,000 Rand that she owed. Finally, we have to calculate the total interest that is paid back. Remember, once again, we're coming back to this. The final amount is always equal to the initial amount plus the interest. So if I want to work out the interest, I just need to take away the initial amount from the final amount. So she ends up paying in total 17,455 Rand and 20 cents, but she only had a debt to settle of 15,000 Rand. Okay, 15,000, not 150,000. So we just need to subtract 15,000 from 17,455 Rand, and you will get an answer of 2,455 Rand and 20 cents. So that is how much of interest she's going to have to pay back on this loan amount of 15,000 Rand. So guys, that's the last example on this section of credit. Please make sure you understand this section quite well and also do all of the practice examples in the exercises at the end.